My sister ghosted me for 12 years. Then she showed up 8 months pregnant, asking me to carry her next baby. My sister Vanessa stood on my doorstep at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night, 8 months pregnant with her hand on her swollen belly. And the first words out of her mouth were, "I need you to be my surrogate." I hadn't seen her in 12 years. Not at our father's funeral, not at our grandmother's wake, not when I got married or divorced, or when I almost died from sepsis last year. 12 years of complete silence. And now she wanted my uterus. I laughed in her face. It wasn't a polite laugh either. It was the kind of harsh bark that comes out when someone asks for something so absurd your brain can't process it any other way. Vanessa's face went red and she started crying immediately, real tears running down her cheeks while she touched her pregnant stomach like she was protecting the baby from my reaction. She said she understood I was angry, but this wasn't about us. It was about saving a life. I asked whose life needed saving when she was clearly about to pop out a kid any minute. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand and said this baby was fine, but she couldn't carry another one. And she desperately needed me to carry her second child because I was the only family she had left who could help her. The logic made zero sense, but before I could tell her to leave, my boyfriend Keith appeared behind me asking who was at the door. Vanessa's eyes went huge when she saw him, and she actually took a step backward off my porch. Keith looked at her pregnant belly, then at me, then back at her, clearly confused about why a heavily pregnant stranger was crying on our doorstep at night. I introduced them flatly, saying this was my sister Vanessa, who I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. Keith's eyebrows shot up because I'd mentioned having a sister exactly once in the 2 years we'd been together, and I'd made it clear she was dead to me. Vanessa tried to smile at him through her tears and said it was nice to meet me finally, that she'd heard so much about him. I asked her how the hell she'd heard anything about Keith when we hadn't communicated in 12 years. She got this guilty look on her face and admitted she'd been following my social media accounts from fake profiles, keeping tabs on my life even though she never reached out. The creepiness of that confession should have made me slam the door immediately, but Keith invited her inside because he's too nice for his own good, and it was starting to rain. Vanessa waddled into my living room and sat down on my couch without being asked, making herself comfortable like she'd been here 100 times before. Keith offered her water and she accepted with this grateful smile that made me want to throw something. I stayed standing with my arms crossed, making it clear this wasn't a social visit and I wanted her gone as soon as possible. She launched into her explanation without any preamble, saying she'd gotten pregnant with her first baby through IVF because she and her husband had fertility issues. The pregnancy had been complicated from the start with severe preeclampsia that nearly killed her at 7 months. Her doctors told her another pregnancy would be too dangerous, that her body couldn't handle it. But she and her husband desperately wanted 2 children, and they had 1 frozen embryo left from their IVF cycle. She needed a surrogate to carry that embryo. And after considering all their options, she realized I was the perfect candidate because we shared DNA, and I'd already proven I could carry a healthy pregnancy to term. I stood there processing the absolute audacity of her request, while Keith looked between us with growing concern. I reminded Vanessa that I'd never successfully carried a pregnancy to term, that I'd had a miscarriage at 14 weeks 3 years ago.